Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome to the Core Women Podcast. I'm thrilled to have the incredible Jen Fontanilla with us. Jen is a TEDx speaker, prolific author, and the mastermind behind the book, The Creative Code, A Creative Professional's Way to Happiness, Wealth, and Joy. As a coach and consultant, she empowers creative professionals and entrepreneurial women to break through money blocks and scarcity stories, illuminating their path to financial brilliance. Plus, she's the dynamic co-host and producer of the Emotional Entrepreneur Show. Get ready for an enlightening conversation with Jen Fontanilla. Welcome.
Thank you, Summer. It's so wonderful to be back on the Core Women Podcast.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you here. I'm excited to jump right into this. But before we jump into aspects of your professional life, if you could describe your life, your journey in one word to this point, what would that word be and why?
Resiliency. And I think when people find out about my personal story, they think, whoa, how did she survive that? It encompasses so many different things, from losing everything, 6 different houses before the last market crash in 2008, and going through a divorce and having to start all over and having to find my identity all over again. I think that journey has been bumpy, but so rewarding in so many ways. And so that's why I chose resiliency.
Thank you. We're going to get into more. So hold tight, folks. We've got a lot to go over here. My next question is, what have been some of the internal challenges? And you kind of touched on those, but let's go a little deeper. Internal challenges that you have confronted along your journey of being a creative. And how did you get past these internal blocks?
I think some of the challenges are something that many of us go through. I think a lot of us sometimes just doubt ourselves, right? We don't believe in our work, where we don't think we're good enough, or we worry, is it good enough? Is somebody going to pay this? And then we lowball our work and we don't ask for what it's worth. And so it creates this cycle of unworthiness or not deserving the things that we should be getting. And so we don't ask for what we deserve. And so I think that's something that we all have dealt with. And that was something that I have experienced myself. And then when you learn to find and tap into that confidence and that belief within you, then you start to realize, like, wait a minute, I don't need to be going through life this way. Why is everybody else winning? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And so when you find that magic spark, that thing that just lights you up, when you start to realize that, hey, wait a minute, I do deserve this, then that's when the magic can happen. And that's when you get to do really, really amazing things.
Well, when you were growing up, what were the messages about being a creative? What were some of those messages around you? Did you think about being a creative when you went to college, when you considered your dreams? What were some of your first thoughts versus where you are now as a creative?
When I was growing up, I remember being really, really artistic. And I know I inherited that from my dad and my grandfather. And I just noticed that, wow, their writing is really neat. They draw really well. My grandfather was truly a traditional artist. He could paint. He actually, back in the Philippines, was the one that created the patterns and painted on the textiles in a manufacturing company. So he really, truly does have an artistic background. But growing up, you get to college and you're thinking, like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to do with this? And at that time, I had no idea about commercial design, meaning, graphic design. You don't think about, where does the artwork on a billboard come from? You don't think about the magazine covers or packaging, who laid out all that information and the pictures and all those different things you see on a commercial level. In my mind growing up, I'm thinking an artist like my grandfather, what am I going to do? How am I going to make money being a sculptor, a painter? I'm going to draw pictures. That in my mind was what a creative was. It was just so bizarre as I look back. And so that was what I grew up with. It wasn't that I was told I couldn't do that, but it was my own doing where I thought, okay, I don't even know how the heck I'm going to make money doing this if I'm just going to draw pictures. And so I ended up going into the next best thing that I really enjoyed, which was science. And I thought I was going to be a doctor.
Wow. Okay. So you made somewhat of a shift. So tell us a bit about your background and some of the key milestones that inspired you to focus on the intersection of creativity and financial empowerment. How did you make that shift?
There's so many different shifts. Like, wait, in science, I know I tell people I use left and right brain. I mean, we all do, but I really do use the analytical and the creative all the time. And so growing up, first, it was just this journey of like, what am I doing? And then I didn't obviously become Dr. Fontanilla. So I didn't pursue that journey. It wasn't until senior year when I was almost done with my undergrad. And then I was just like, okay, we're not doing this. But I did want to get the hell out of college. I wanted to go to a design school afterwards, but I said, let me just pick up this degree. I'm ready at the tail end, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do. Once I did that and went to various different design schools and art schools, and I took so many amazing classes from industry greats. One of my advertising teachers, Mikio, he invented Smokey the Bear. He also helped brand 31 flavors. One of my other teachers was the one that invented Hypercolor. Do you remember those shirts?
Yes.
And Swatch. These are the kind of people I studied under. It was such a wonderful journey. And then I entered the workforce. And that changes many things as a creative, because now you're dealing with deadlines, you're dealing with crazy projects and whatnot. And I actually started experiencing burnout. And some of the clients that I had worked with were people from the movie industry. And so I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I don't like this anymore. I'm burnt. The deadlines are crazy. The demand is just nuts. I'm over this. And so it made me sad, because I thought to myself, something that I love doing so much is now being severely impacted because of deadlines and just so demanding, the things that you had to do and the hours that you had to work. And so I started plotting like, okay, what can I do instead? The way that the story goes is I had a friend who was visiting. I'm here in Los Angeles. So I have a friend that was studying at Boston University. And so she was over for the summer. And so one day I was at her house and she was like writing these numbers on a piece of paper. And I was like, what is she doing? And I realized they were letters. And I go, hey, what are you doing over there? And she's like, oh, I'm picking stocks. And I'm somebody that's like FOMO. Like if it's something that has to do with information or being able to get in a position where it advances you and I don't know about it, I do experience that FOMO. And so I'm just like, wait a minute, what does she know that I don't know, right? So then I got really interested in like, okay, I know there's got to be more to this than this checking and savings account. And so long story short, I decided to become a financial advisor. I decided like, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to get the licenses because I want to understand money. While I was a designer, I mean, I was in my early 20s making more like triple, double than my mom was. She wasn't retired yet. So I was doing really, really well as a designer, but it bugged me knowing that like, what the heck am I doing with this money? Thankfully, I wasn't a spender, but I knew that there had to be a better way to save the money. So I entered the financial services arena. That was about 19 years ago. I'm still very active in it today, and I still design. And that's pretty much how all those worlds converged during that time. It happens to always be this period of discovery. And I'm also the kind of person that when I don't like what's going on in my life, I'm going to do something about it. I don't care how drastic the change is, how off the wall and weird it is. It's always me searching for how can I change the situation now so that I can experience joy and thrive. Because I'm not going to sit around and just wallow in unhappiness, because that doesn't work for me.
Where did you get this courage to be able to get up and change not just your disposition, but your situation? Some of those shifts are major. Going through losses, going through, I've graduated from college, but I'm not going to pursue a medical degree. I'm going to go down a creative path. And it looks so different. Yet you took the risk. Did you research? Did you just jump into it? What was it?
I think it's because I'm an Aries. But honestly, I have to say, I really think it has to do with that and me just being somebody who's not afraid of change. I've always loved change, and Summer knows me well. I'm somebody who loves startup companies. I've been involved with many startups and many startup nonprofits. I always get called or brought in when it's the beginning of like, we don't know what we're doing, but we're figuring it out. I'm like, yeah, story of my life, right? And I love it. I love that moment where you're trying to figure things out. It's a whole different shift. I think just my brain, because it's so creative, I just like that part of things where, yeah, we don't know what we're doing, but when a company or an organization gets to the point where that stuff has been figured out, I like to also be that person that like, okay, let's bring structure in now. Now that we kind of figure out what the hell we're doing, let's start bringing some structure into this so that we can be sustainable, so that we can figure out how do we move forward faster, but being very strategic. We always have to allow ourselves that time to, do the mess ups and have the mistakes and failures and setbacks and learnings. And I think I'm just somebody that embraces that. I think it's fun. I think it's fun to look back and like, man, remember when we didn't know what the heck we were doing? I like that stuff. I just never really been one to go like, but what if it doesn't work? It doesn't not cross my mind, but it also doesn't stay there where I'm not somebody who worries and goes like, what if it doesn't work out? And this might happen. My brain doesn't go there. And I think because I've always focused on the possibilities and what's fun with it and what the possible return is and wow, where can this take me next? I focus on that stuff. And that's what keeps me enthusiastic about what I do, because there's always these constant changes, but I embrace it. I don't fear it. I don't back away from it. I look at it and go like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is where I'm trying to go. And as long as I feel that there's true alignment and congruency with all the different things that's going in that direction, I'm game. I'm for it. And so I think that's what I've done all my life, just because I look at it as fun. And as you know me, I like to gamify things. So for me, it's also a game and it's also a competition with myself. Like, how do I become better each day with what I'm learning and the things that I'm learning to navigate through?
I love that, Jen, because I've seen you in action. As you said, we do know each other well. So I've seen you in action being that person to take that leap, to look at the possibilities. But I've also seen you look at the results of taking that leap and refining what you've done. I know that you're very courageous. I know that you like to take the jump pretty quickly when you find out, like, yes, this is something I'm interested in. I'm going to do this. I'm all in. Yet I also see that you do have points of reflection where you say, you know what? That could be done a little differently. Let's try this differently, or let's try this some other way the next time. But there is a next time. And that's something that I absolutely love about you is you aren't closed off because of a misstep. You aren't shut down, or you don't shy away from that courageous step because maybe it didn't work out quite the way you envisioned it.
Absolutely. And thank you for saying that. I forgot to mention, I am the person that jumps into things. Summer is the person that brings me back down to earth. There's a couple of things she's like, wait. Let's take a look at this. You don't need to do that right now. And there have been a couple moments where that's happened. But for the most part, I do jump into things. And does that always work out? No. I'm not going to sit here and say, 100%. No. Many times I have fallen. But I mean, you hear me laughing about it, right? Because again, when they do happen, I look at the positive. I look at, okay, what can I learn from this? Oh, yeah, that was stupid as hell. Or, what can I do better? Or, okay, why did I not see that red flag? What was I distracted by? What was I going through at that time? These are the kinds of questions that I ask myself when I do those points of reflection, when I'm sitting down journaling, when I'm trying to just sit still and figure out, hey, what happened there? What happened there? Sometimes like one or the other, the way I'm asking myself. But I think that's really, really important in your journey to stop and pause. And I do a lot of reflecting. And I think that's when I get the best ideas. And I think it's also important for us to remember to be kind to ourselves. That's the other thing too. I might joke around like, oh yeah, that was stupid. But for real, I'm very, very kind to myself because I'm always telling people, be compassionate, don't beat yourself up. You have to be very careful with the words that you're saying when you do go through those moments of failure, missteps, as Summer likes to call it. whatever you call it, you have to be loving to yourself. If you're a parent, you don't yell at your kid. Well, you shouldn't yell at your kid. When they make a mistake, what do you say? Oh, honey, it's okay. You can just get back up. Or, hey, you know what? You did your best. You still can do good. It's okay. Or we say that to our friend, right? When they're going through something. And yet so often we're beating ourselves up instead of being compassionate and loving towards ourselves. So please be very, very careful how you speak to yourself in those moments. Instead, take that time to reflect and go like, hey, what can I learn from this? And trust me, and Summer knows, I apply this not only to business, but oh my goodness, personally.
I posed that question because you are so good at taking time to reflect. You are great at journaling. You are great at really pursuing and identifying some of the missteps or the things that maybe you've gone through that you can change or apply differently in the future. And I brought that up because I love how you do that. We're going to take a little shift here because you've done this again. You have put your energy into something really great. And that's your new book, The Creative Code. It's an international bestseller. You share some key insights from the book that can help our listeners achieve happiness, wealth, and joy. Can you tell us more about this incredible book?
Yes, thank you. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you for all those things you said. Yeah, so I actually did a TEDx last September. That was a whole nother journey. Lots of learnings from that incredible experience. I realized, you know what? How do I help whoever's listening to this? What's the next step? Because you hear the talk, but now what's next? And you start to wonder, what's the best way to do this? And I thought, hey, you know what? Let me write a book. Let me take all the things that I have helped people with, clients, friends, whatnot, and take some of that and also expand the theories and things that I talked about in the TEDx talk. That's pretty much how the book came about. But it also came from me wanting to create a program, which is something else that I'm going to work on next. But I had this outline for a couple years and it was on the wall. I kept staring at it. And it was just this perfect timing again, where I'm like, okay, let's just take that outline. It changed dramatically from what it started to where the book finally ended. It almost doubled in terms of the value and information. But it really was just, again, sitting down and thinking, what's the next step? And I think that's what has worked for me and how I'm able to think of different things, because it's in those moments when I do think of the ideas and I think about like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. Like, oh my gosh, I should totally look into this. I mean, Summer, I know you get your best ideas when you're in the shower, right?
I do.
Right. It's because we're relaxed. We're allowing our brain to breathe. And that's why it's so important to stop and pause. I think sometimes we say things like, oh, I don't have time, I can't stop. But you're going to set yourself further back if you don't stop. You'll get so much further ahead if you just let your brain breathe and relax and have some thoughts and ideas come to you. Plus, it's good for you to just breathe and just stop and pause just physically. You'll get further ahead by doing that than feeling like you can't stop. Then the book came along and it was just, how do I put these ideas together in a book format? And that was part of it. And then other things too is like, one of my other goals this year is to increase my speaking engagements. And so I wanted to be able to have something to give to the audience members if, they wanted to further expand their knowledge in this subject matter of creativity with money mindset. And so, yeah, those are a few of the reasons how the book came along.
Well, I love that. I love how you did that transition between TEDx to book and in the future program. So brava to you. That's so exciting. I'm excited for you, Jen. Now, I have a couple more questions that I want to get to. Can you tell us about your experience co-hosting and producing the Emotional Entrepreneur Show, and how does this platform actually complement your work as a coach and consultant?
Oh my gosh, the experience is so much freaking fun. So again, if you guys aren't joining us every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, Summer and I are live on Instagram with the Emotional Entrepreneur Show. And it's just a blast. I mean, even that in itself has been such an amazing journey and progression from where it originally started. And that's the thing. I mean, embracing the change and evolving and stopping and pausing and going, hey, you know what? Do we need to shift into a different direction? Do we need to change things? For me personally, it's been wonderful. I love how we have so much fun. We talk about issues. We talk about things that are relevant to our community and audience members. And, judging by the comments and what people say, like, we know it's resonating. And that's what's important to us, because it's about us building relationships with our community members and people who listen, and knowing that we're making that kind of impact. So it's been fun, because we all, especially as entrepreneurs, go through so many things, especially when it comes to emotions and feelings and feeling like a failure and loser and all those bad words. But that's why we have the show, to support one another, to show that there are resources and there are different ways to approach this when you do encounter those moments.
I love that you mentioned all those naughty or bad words, because as other entrepreneurs out there go through these shifts and go through these changes, we experience these emotions. That's what the show is about, is how can we build a community as we go through these emotions and share what we're feeling and get the support that we need. So I absolutely love doing the show with you. I love what you've created here. My last question for you, Jen, as we come to the close of the interview, for creative professionals looking to illuminate their financial brilliance, what is one practical step they can take today? Yes, today, to start their journey towards financial freedom?
One of the simplest things that you can do is to sit down and to just make a list of all your experience. I don't care if it's, I painted rainbows in preschool with the watercolors, I got first place in the potato sack race in 3rd grade. I think it's so important for us to acknowledge our experience and the things that we've learned over the years. And the reason why I want you to do this is because some of you out there are still doubting your abilities and expertise and talent and the gifts you have as a creative. And you forget how good you are. You forget how valuable the work is that you do. And even if you're not in a quote unquote creative position, you can still do this exercise. And I think it's important for us to go back and remember, like, yeah, Summer, you got your doctorate. That's such a big thing, right? Some of you have coaching certificates. Some of you have gone through so many different types of experience. Maybe it's not in a formal education type way, but maybe you had 15 years of running your parents' store. So you have real world entrepreneur experience. Whatever it is, it's so important that you list this down, because you forget. And then when you start to make your offer, and then when you start to make your pricing sheet and how much things cost, you start lowballing it. And then you're not happy. And then you feel disgruntled, because if somebody does pay for it, you know what I'm talking about when you have that cringy energy that you're doing something that you should be getting paid twice the amount.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good. And I think that's so important for us to pay attention to. What is that price that you feel that there's fair compensation and that you feel good about in exchange for the value that you're giving? Trying to be the cheapest out there is not the way to go. I mean, look what's happening to these dollar stores.
Mm-hmm.
They're going out of business. You cannot always compete on price. That's a small shift. But I think if you start trying to think in the sense of, hey, you know what? Do I want to be the Mortons or do I want to be the Applebee's? Like, that's you valuing your expertise and quality. And so I think it's important, again, to just go through that list and remind yourself when you get into those moments when you want to start slashing the prices because you're afraid no one's going to buy it because it's quote unquote too high, no one's going to buy it. That's so not true. That is so not true. There are so many people out there that are willing to spend the money on you, but you need to believe in yourself and you need to exude that energy of confidence in order for other people to believe in you as well.
I love those words of wisdom. I absolutely agree. Have we ever thought about putting such a small value on ourselves that people question what's their expertise? What is their value? When you don't put your actual value, people will begin to question that too.
Right.
I love your tip. Thank you, Jen, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited that we got to do this.
Absolutely. You can follow Jen Fontanilla on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Jen Money Coach and at jenmoneycoach.com. And you can also find the link to her free gift at the link in the comments and check out her new book, The Creative Code, A Creative Professional's Way to Happiness, Wealth, and Joy on Amazon.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.